the Street Glide and the Road Glide are so similar. You may be looking at these bikes and maybe even buying one and thinking, where the hell do I start as far as the differences of these two? And today, that's what I'm going to help you out with as we look at these big differences between the Road Glide Special and the Street Glide Special. And it might actually shock you as to which one I like the best and why. You know what I got to do from here. Big thanks to American Biker here in Charleston, South Carolina. Come visit these guys, talk to Rob on buying a used Harley like this one, or a brand new Indian, or a used Indian, or a Revzilla, or whatever the hell you like that doesn't involve four wheels. Let's go ahead and get this review started. If this is your first time stopping by, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit your notifications so you never miss a video from me. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So what I hope to accomplish here is tell you some of the big differences here, because there's really not a lot. From the tank to the motor to the bags, they are very similar. And if you're looking at buying one of these bikes, you may be thinking, what the hell is the difference besides some of the obvious things, which we'll touch on as well. So very similar bikes, but very different in the way they ride. And that's what we're gonna start out with, and that is this fairing. There is a huge aesthetic difference between these two fairings. And the fairing really is kind of the heart of this video, because not only is it aesthetically different, but the way the bikes are set up are different because of the fairing. So starting with the Street Glide, it has more of that flat appearance, although Harley has done a really good job of making it more aerodynamic than what it used to be, whereas the Road Glide is truly aerodynamic. And of course it's the shark nose fairing, which they've changed over time as well. But just from the front, the two bikes look wildly different. But that also makes a difference in the way they drive, because the Street Glide Special is actually fork mounted, which means when you turn the handlebars, you're turning the fairing at the same time, whereas the Road Glide is actually frame mounted. So when you turn the handlebars on the Road Glide, you're just turning the bars, you're not actually moving the fairing at all. It's always stationary. And this makes a huge difference when you're actually steering the bike, when you're doing U-turns especially. I noticed on the Street Glide, and don't get me wrong, anybody can learn how to drive either one of these bikes and, you know, be amazing on them. But the Street Glide does take more effort, especially for a shorter person like me, to get that thing way over. It just seems like it took a lot of practice, where I felt almost very comfortable from day one doing those kinds of things on the Road Glide Special. It's just a different kind of feeling. The steering actually just feels lighter on this bike, and also when you're actually riding in the wind, it feels different too. This one feels like you could go 2,000 miles straight almost. That's kind of a stretch, but you know what I'm saying. You can really go a long distance on this thing because it is so aerodynamic. The Street Glide Special is not bad. Don't get me wrong, dude. It's one of my favorite bikes that Harley makes. But at the same time, you get a little bit of buffering and stuff. And because it's not so aerodynamic, it almost forces you to kind of put more pressure on the bars in a way, where this one's just so easy to ride. There's just a little bit more energy, I think, that takes with the Street Glide. It's really not bad, but over a period of time, you could start to notice maybe more fatigue on the Street Glide, because like I said, it just takes a little bit more pressure and a little bit more work to keep that thing in a straight line. But again, when I say that, it's not like it doesn't hold a straight line. It just takes a little bit more work with the Street Glide than it does the Road Glide, I feel. So aside from the aesthetic difference, one difference as well is the headlights, of course. So you have the single headlight on the Street Glide Special. You actually have the dual headlights on the Road Glide. Now, one thing you can do on the Street Glide Special, which I prefer, is you can actually add your auxiliary lamps. If you replace this bracket here, it will actually allow you to add auxiliary lamps on either side of your main headlamp, which is what I did on my Street Glide Special, kind of like the way the Ultra Limiteds are set up. Now, you can add auxiliary lights on the Road Glide, but instead of going on this bracket here on the actual fork tubes, it's actually going to go on the crash bar itself. So they're a little bit different in the lighting. And then the Road Glide actually comes with LEDs straight from the factory. I think the new Street Glides finally come with an LED, but for the longest time, even on this 2019 and the 2020s, I believe, they still came with a halogen. The lighting on the Road Glide is fantastic the way it is, whereas the Street Glide, I feel like you have to add those auxiliary lights to get really good lighting, especially at night, of course. What you look at as a rider is wildly different on the two as well. So on the Road Glide, you have your mirrors that are actually on the handlebars like a traditional bike, and I believe the Ultra Limiteds are set up like that as well. But on the Street Glide, they're actually built into the fairing itself. So it's got a really clean look to it. Neither one is better as far as the way they work, but the way this looks right here on the Street Glide Special, I like it 100 times better than these mirrors on the Road Glide. Also, the storage component of it. So the Road Glide, the speakers are set up a little bit different, and you also have storage on both sides where you can actually fit a cell phone or something like that. On the Street Glide Special, you really don't have any of that. You basically have one right here, and it's not big enough to fit any real modern cell phone at least. So storage, the nod goes to the Road Glide Special. Of course, the dash is different too, where you have 2 gauges on either side of your screen, and your radio setup on the Road Glide, you actually have all 4 right in a line on the Street Glide, and then the radio right before that. Now, as far as which one is better, I would actually say the Street Glide, because I'm a little bit shorter, it's actually easier to reach the radio and stuff. With this one, it's just a little bit more of a stretch if I had to say anything negative about the Road Glide. But as far as the storage, obviously the Road Glide kind of wins there. They both kind of give you a custom look right from the factory, and the storage might be better on this one, the screen placement might be better on this one, but it's really going to be a personal preference. They both work really well. They both have a custom look to them, custom feel. So that part of it, just kind of which one ever you like better. So as far as these specs on the bike, the Road Glide is a little bit heavier. I want to say like maybe 40 pounds, but they're both, you know, in the upper 8s on the Road Glide, mid 8s on the Street Glide. I think the Road Glide has like 0.2 of an inch better ground clearance. So same seat height, 26.1 inches laden, very close. Now, these bars are aftermarket style T-bars, but from the factory on the Street Glide, I don't feel like it's nearly as comfortable as it is on the Road Glide. The bars don't come back to you as much on the Street Glide as they do on the actual Road Glide. With this setup here, this is pretty natural. You can see how I'm sitting right here. It's just ready to go, really. I mean, I actually like these bars a lot. This one, of course, has the hydraulic clutch. Not a fan. That's why I always change them on these bikes. But regardless, the way this is set up here, it's kind of hard to judge it because it's not the factory setup. But this is actually not a bad setup with these T-style bars. Actually, I like it. It's closer to the fairing though too. Even from the factory, the bars are closer to the fairing. So depending on your height, the only time I ever noticed that this was an issue was trying to do U-turns. Again, you can learn to do U-turns if you're a shorter guy like me or even shorter. I'm not saying you can't, but I did notice that the comfort level in starting out, especially on a big touring bike, which the Street Glide was my first time on a big touring bike, it did make that adjustment a little bit harder than it did on the Road Glide. And I'm gonna show you what I look like on the Road Glide here, but just to give you an idea, I feel a little bit more, not as kind of laid back, just maybe a little bit more forward. Again, the difference is almost negligible, but I like the Road Glide better. Let me show you why. So maybe seeing these back to back will give you an idea of what the difference actually is here. You can see the bars kind of come back to me a little bit. This is a stock bar setup, by the way. And so when I'm actually doing this, I mean, it literally feels just so much easier trying to turn because you're not turning the fairing. That's staying in its place there, and I'm just turning the bars. It's a very nice and natural kind of feeling to me, man. Absolutely love it. And as far as like flat footing the bikes, with the stock setup the way they are, I cannot flat foot on both sides. I can almost do it, so I'll give myself a little bit of credit, but I can't quite flat foot them. So I actually put the reach seat on my Road Glide Special, and that gives me the ability to flat foot just like that. I only need that little bit of difference to be able to flat foot on either one of the bikes. So that may be something you want to do or not. So we talked about the seating position, the floorboards, the way those feel, your shifter, it all feels very similar. There's not really a big difference there. It's just really in that steering. And although this one weighs a little bit more, it feels lighter in that regard. And you do get a little bit more air through the Road Glide fairing because of the vents right here directly in the center on either side of your radio screen. So it is kind of nice, man, unless you're riding in winter, which that case, well, it kind of sucks because the Street Glide Special does a better job there because you really don't have a lot of open air or anything coming through the Street Glide. So when it comes to the rest of the features on the bikes, like I said, from the motor to the bags to the back end, they are essentially the same. What you're gonna find is the difference pretty much from here back to here. This is it, essentially, on both bikes. And when it comes down to it, man, I personally like the way the Street Glide Special looks. Aesthetically, that is, I mean, it's one of the best looking bikes out there, in my opinion. This right here, it's sick. And by the way, this color, I'll share a little secret with y'all. This is kind of what I wanted on this, but I like the red and black, don't get me wrong, but this color, this way the bike, this is set up, absolutely incredible. It's a custom bike straight from the factory that comes with a warranty. It's really incredibly striking and amazing looking. But when it comes to riding them, I'll take the Road Glide any day. It is just a smoother feel, smoother on the highway, smoother as far as turning the bars. It's just a more comfortable bike for me. I love the additional storage and stuff that you get on this one that you don't on here. But that's just my opinion. I, of course, want to hear what yours is down in the comments below. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll see you in the next one. And as always, hold the rubber side down.